a bit early to reach here, managing the traffic. So we are Sacred Heart University Alumni Association. We are organizing a private equity event today, and it's in collaboration with the Luxembourg City Incubator providing us the venue. So they are the sponsor for the venue. Big thanks to them. And then we have Three Hills who are sponsoring the catering as well tonight. So our association, as you know, Sacred Heart University had to close, shut down their operations in Luxembourg 2 years ago, in July 2022. But we managed to keep this spirit up and do 3 to 4 events in a year. And we're still managing to do that for almost 2 years now. And we want to continue the spirit and maintain the network. So I don't want to take too much of time. I'll quickly introduce Bastian, who has kindly given us this venue. I would like to say big thanks to Bastian here. Thank you, Bastian.
Thank you, Saeed. So my name is Bastian. I'm the CEO of the Luxembourg City Incubator, which is one of the startup incubators here in the building. Just to give you some numbers, we have around 60 startups which we support, different maturity levels, from very early stage startups to more mature companies who have raised already up to 40 million euros. It counts more or less, so the 60 startups, they have more or less 300 people working for them, and it's spread over 2 floors of space, so 2,000 square meters of space. And we support them along their growth procedures and process, also to go international. And yeah, this is a little bit what we do. So when Saeed asked me to get a venue, a fancy venue, a nice venue, I said straight away yes, let's go, because I was also part of the MBA student batch 2017-18 together with Cristina, Jacqueline, Maxime, and Saeed, and plenty of others. So we are always there to help and to support these kinds of initiatives. And yeah, congrats to have all those people together tonight and have fun.
Thank you, Bastian. So, without any delay, I'd like to invite Cristina, who is going to be the moderator of the panel today. We have a very experienced panel today, and yeah, Cristina.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shaheen. So I would ask the panelists please to take your seats. So we want to welcome, first of all, welcome you all to our panel. How to build a career in private equity. As Sahil said, we are in straight collaboration with LPA, so George is at the member. We are also with the sponsorship of Three Hills, and of course the House of Startups. So my name is Cristina Von Mayer. I'm part of the association of the SHULU MBA, and I bring over 20 years of international experience across Europe, US and China. I work for companies like Vodafone, Gartner, Deloitte, Huawei, in building, basically doing business growth and product launches and market expansion. And I'm currently working for European central banks and European institutions in my role at Proximus Luxembourg. So it is my big pleasure now to introduce our distinguished panelists. I will start first to introduce Christine Imbens. So Christine is a finance manager at Three Hills with a decade in private equity. Christine excels in financial reporting, digital transformation, auditing and portfolio valuation, and mentoring future leaders in finance. Christine is known for optimizing processes and driving growth. She holds an MBA in private equity from Sacred Heart University. George Bacallas is head of private equity with 18 years in corporate finance, private equity, and venture capital, serving clients across Europe, Asia, and the US. George is also a founder and angel investor in innovative SaaS and fintech startups. Gunther Fischer, with 22 years in fund of funds investments, Gunther has pioneered climate and infrastructure funds like the Emerging Market Climate Action Fund, NCAP, and Gare, renewables, for the European Investment Bank. Now at the EID Institute, he focused on knowledge sharing and high impact projects, such as sustainable finance. Jens Holletman. Jens has more than 17 years of experience in alternative asset management. Jens worked for 2 major private equity firms, overseeing different kinds of investment strategies across Europe and the US. Jens is now the founder of Intabilis, providing strategic advice and administrative services for private equity. So these are our very knowledgeable panelists. We would like to say that the panel will last around 45 minutes, and we would like this to be a very interactive panel because we are, let's say, a limited number of attendees. So please, you just raise your question. Don't be afraid to interrupt. If we pass for 50 minutes, there is no problem. There will be also a networking period where you can continue the discussion afterwards with a little bit lighting. Okay, so please be free to interrupt us. So I will start first with Gunter, with our introduction to the PE ecosystem. So Gunter, would you please briefly explain the major components of the PE ecosystem? So the service providers, general partners, and limited partners, how they coexist together.
Thank you, Cristina. Thank you for the invitation. It's good to be here. To set a bit the scene, what we're talking about. Private equity is a big industry in the European context. In total, look at the statistics, in Europe, 10 million people are employed by firms that own companies, private equity firms that own companies in the European context. So it is a big actor in the field. This is not primarily what we're talking about today, because these are Carlyle, KKR owning a firm, but we're talking directly about the actors that are executing these strategies in the private equity context. And in this context, we have basically 3 types of actors. On one side, we have the private equity houses, the alternative investment fund managers, AIFMs, that are implementing the funds. You have the service providers in the full range, and there can be placement agents, investment banks, consultancies for due diligence, lawyers, compliance and risk management firms, administration agents, and auditors. And you have the limited partners. EIB is one of them, who are working for an investor in private equity funds, but there are others as well. There are family offices, pension funds, insurance companies, big asset managers that are investing in these funds, development banks, sovereign wealth funds, and others as well. So we have these 3 actors, if you will, that are making a fund, bring a fund to life and help to implement the strategy, develop the strategy, implement it, and then harvest the investments. The private equity houses, fund managers as main drivers, but then supported by the service providers, and only being able to do that because investors are relying on them and provide the capital. Some words on the private equity firms, on the GPs, general partners, in this context. In Luxembourg, there are circa 300 AIFMs, alternative investment fund managers. They are range in size from 5-10 employees to big houses worldwide, the Carlyles, the KKRs, who have 4,000 or 5,000 employees worldwide. So it's quite a range of size for these private equity houses. For a small, the average size of a Luxembourgish AIFM is 10, 11, 12 full-time equivalents, over different functions in there. Portfolio management and investor relation, the core of it, 3 people, 3 for finance and admin and valuation, 3 to 4 for legal, tax and support, and 2 for control functions, risk management also. So that's the average size of a smaller house, but again, we have also some big ones, big investors in the Luxembourgish context. Also to structure the talk a little bit, this is about how to make a career in private equity. In addition to private equity, there are other strategies as well. You can invest in private credit, which is not on the equity side. You can do infrastructure investments. You can do impact investments, where I'm also engaged in the impact investing advisory board in the Luxembourgish context, so there's a whole range of strategies. The biggest one is the private equity, which basically means you're taking equity and invest in firms to either in a startup venture capital firm to grow them, have them grow later on in buyer context to take them over. The structure of these firms internally, in terms of their employment structure, is similar to investment banks, from a junior analyst up to partner, manager, vice president, the whole range in between. We're going to go a little bit deeper into that. And the last point I want to give you as statistics here in Luxembourg. These alternative investment fund managers, AFIMs here in Luxembourg, employ over 7,000 people. And in terms of open jobs, not only by these AFIMs, but in the private equity context, there are more than 1,000 open positions in the private equity context. These are LPA, the Luxembourg Private Equity Association figures, where they're typically ranging between 1,200, 1,300. So it's quite a universe that is here in Luxembourg that we're going to dive in deeper on these different facets.
Thank you very much, Gunther. And has a start now by George in the service providers. And George, would you please explain the different positions that are available for people who just enter or want to advance their careers in the PE industry? How would they approach this job ecosystem?
Yeah, of course. So, first of all, what is a service provider? So, service provider is a company that provides support to fund managers. And support in the broadest sense means basically middle office and back office functions. So in Luxembourg we have, I would say, three main categories of service providers. We have big consulting / accounting firms, the likes of Big Four, PwC, YKB, and Deloitte. In these providers you can see careers in different services, like from auditing, tax advice, and transactional services. The typical career within those firms is from associate to partner level. What we have seen in the last years is that a career of that range lasts from 12 to 15 years, so it can take you from 12 to 15 years to go from entry-level associate to a partner-level position. We have thousands of people working in these accounting firms. Just to give you an example, PwC, I think they have close to 4,000 people at the moment. When I joined PwC in Luxembourg in 2015, it was like 1,500 people. So you can see the growth in these accounting firms. Then we have the law firms. So law firms are providing services for M&A and fund formation, mainly in Lux, but it's a quite different career path. Right? So it's a career in law and requires a different set of skills. And then the third type of service provider that is prevalent in Luxembourg is fund administrators, similar to a Langham Hall. And these are service providers that are offering back and middle office services to fund managers, meaning services that range from accounting, legal, corporate secretarial, supporting valuations, etc. This space has seen a significant growth over the last 10 years. Just to give you an example, when I joined Langham Hall 3 years ago, I took over a team of 7 people. So it was a small practice, private equity for them. And as of today, we have 100 people working in private equity. So my team grew from 7 to 100 people in 3 years. These lines between service providers are now blurring, which is also good news because we can move and change career path among those service providers. So you can easily start, and I'm a good example, right? Starting in a Big Four, 16, 17 years ago, moving different service lines and different locations, and then making a move to a fund administrator in the private equity space.
In deep diving, George, when talking about these back middle office functions in the service providers, what would be the difference to work for a service provider or to be working in an in-house private equity?
So what we call front office in private equity house is mainly the building. Of course, there are support functions within a private equity firm. So, for example, fund administrators, we can offer accounting, we can offer legal support, but on the other side, you can see fund administrators, or you can find those functions serviced by internal teams. And I think that is good.
Yeah, maybe Cristina, based on your experience,
There are different philosophies as well. There are private equity houses who prefer doing everything or most of the things internally, and there are other private equity houses who prefer these outsourced ones. But the typical career path in Luxembourg could also be that one is starting at a service provider to go to a private equity house at a later stage.
It's a similar scope, while when you are working for an in-house position, you can focus entirely on internal stakeholders.
So indeed, as George and Jens said, the natural transition to get into a private equity house is coming from the service industry. Me myself have done over 5 years in Deloitte, then transferred to a service provider at London Hall, and now I work for Three Hills. And also indeed at Three Hills, we are working very closely together with service providers, and depending on the private equity house, that collaboration might be more intense than in others. For Luxembourg, for example, we do the Luxembourg environment, we do everything in-house, but then depends on the investment strategies, we also have businesses in the US, in Italy, in Spain. There we are working closely together with local service providers because they have that specific knowledge for the industry. While people working in private equity firms, they're more a generalist in terms of doing accounting, doing reporting, servicing the investors, and for specific deals, for specific reports, we collaborate with companies like Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, EY, or specific lawyers who have a particular knowledge on impact investing, for example, because that requires a different legal background.
Anyone has a question about the service providers? So this group that they mentioned with the fund admin, with the consultancy, with the law firms, this set of skills, accounting, back middle office. Do you have any questions? Any doubts about these different possibilities working for a service provider? We can also address later. Yes, please.
Maybe a remark, and maybe you will answer it later on, but the career paths we're talking now are really classical career paths, coming from the Big Four or others, and then moving through the scales. I'm interested to know how you can grow through it as well, but coming from other paths, and that's what skill sets are you guys looking for, and how are you going to recruit those people as well?
Okay,
People
so
coming from the startup environment, people who had startups, and
maybe
so
we cover this in the end when we cover.
Oh, we can maybe
address
I don't know. We haven't addressed it later.
No. I was just questioning.
I just remember one example.
Yes.
So we talk later also a bit about education, and Gunther and I are giving a private equity course here in Luxembourg. Previously we gave it for Sacred Heart University, now we give it to Reconciliation. And I remember we had one student who was client relationship manager at Vodafone, and he didn't have a clue about private equity. But he was interested in this topic and did our course. He finished the course best. And then he said, oh, I've learned now so many interesting things, I'm doing the MBA as well. And after the MBA, he just was looking for positions at PE houses, and he found one. And now he's working in PE. So this is not a typical career, yeah, but they exist. Yeah? But this then requires also some educational background to evidence some experience and knowledge in the industry.
And maybe to expand a little bit, I mean, the private equity universe is broad, the alternative investment universe is very, very broad. And if you're raising a fund to do life science investments, venture capital, you will not be credible without somebody who has an academic background in life science, molecular biology, medical background or so. So these are not the typical finance careers. These are people who bring the content. The same for infrastructure. If you're doing renewable energy investment, you will want to have an engineer in the team, a civil engineer doing the construction, or an engineer who understands the electricity systems, things like this. If you're doing infrastructure investment, the same. You need to, or real estate. You need a building expert around this. So these are not the typical, the finance career and auditing and you go there. But these are experts that, what I think you were referring to, or as well, because you mentioned startups. If you have an experience of you yourself are a serial entrepreneur, or you have coached others, this will be for venture capital firms, for growth firms, very interesting to help them grow. So there is this room in fund managers as well.
And what I would like to add as well, what's very important is a network. In order to get access to private equity houses, it's really helpful to have a network, because a lot of the open positions are not necessarily freely available. We work a lot with headhunters, and it's very rarely, especially for the more senior positions, that we would post something on LinkedIn. Then we're working with very exclusive headhunters. But I also want to add to that, for example, in our firm, in our London office, we have a former communication expert from the fashion industry, nothing to do with private equity, who started working with us a couple of years ago. So there's definitely the possibility to make that transition. One, if you keep studying, keep being aware of what is happening on the market with a network and an open mind, I would say.
And if I may, also one addition, let's assume you're joining a firm with a technical background, you will still need financial expertise, because you will make investments in this risk-return assessment and to appraise that, but that you can learn it.
To what extent do you think AI is impacting or likely to impact these professions?
AI?
Yeah.
In the investment phase or in the service phase?
I think, sorry if I can think of first. Sorry. More and more. One problem that we're struggling with is finding good candidates. And I think I speak also for the service industry, it's very difficult to keep people not burned out, because there is a lot of work. There's a lot of open positions that are difficult to fulfill. And so we are looking more and more into how AI can support us. Unfortunately, because we are working also with a highly regulated environment, you cannot just do everything. So there's still a lot of uncertainty of what we can do with it, but more and more, even Luxembourg is very known for RegTech, and there's more and more technological startups that we are collaborating with in how we can speed up certain processes, lowering the manual labor. I had a presentation last week of a firm, CSSF questionnaires that easily takes 2 weeks to complete. Now they can do 200 questions in 40 minutes with AI. So there are possibilities, but we need to find the right balance between regulation, between the confidentiality, and of course the human aspect.
In the deal phase, I think AI could be the next big thing. I was working for a Swedish PE house with a very entrepreneurial background. And when we launched the first venture capital fund here in Luxembourg, we created this AI tool to find new investments in the VC or growth space. You can Google it. It's called Mother Brain. Mother Brain.
Brain.
Mother Brain. Yeah, you will find a lot of information about this tool online. So far, AI can only support the deal teams, and one or the other interesting hit will come out. But finding the right deal is so complex, and the bigger the companies are, the more complex it is. Now you could argue for the smaller deals, VC and growth, it might be easier. True. But on the other side, there's always the human aspect. And at VC, we still say we look more at the people than on the product. Because even good people can sell the most silly product, but not vice versa. So AI is very difficult to use when it comes to look at people or talent. AI can look at hard figures, hard metrics, and there it can help. But we have started with it.
Okay, so I think from summarizing, there is a lot of possibilities in the service providers, not only from people coming and starting their careers, but also to upskill, that there is a need for education. In terms of AI, I think there are cases of use cases of productivity from the services back middle office. From the deal valuation, definitely the human in the loop, where there is this accuracy, and so it's not that it will replace people, which is always the...
And just one last comment on technology. So it's very high on the agenda of service providers in the industry, and the industry as a whole is investing millions and millions in technology. And over the last years, what we have seen for the first time is we have seen now software companies moving into the fund admin space. And a great example is Gare. Maybe you know Gare is a company that was founded in Silicon Valley 10 years ago. They started providing cap table services, and they moved to fund admin space last 3-4 years. So the founder is a close friend of mine. In 1 year, they managed to capture 80% of the venture capital space in the US. And they've made a move into Europe last year, and they have got a license in Luxembourg. So,
what is their technology, what they are offering?
So it's a software company. They started with a platform providing cap table solutions. So the idea was basic. You keep your cap table in Excel file.
Okay.
It's full of errors, and it's not easy to track. We put that in a platform. So they managed to get basically the majority of the startups in Silicon Valley. So then you have the startups, you have the LPs, and then what is missing is the GPs. So now they are closing the loop. And I think that platforms of providers like that would be a huge disruption in our industry for years.
So it will be another vector, we need another panelist on the technology. Okay, moving forward, we will go now for the general partners. Thank you for your great questions. So Cristina, we have talked about the middle and back office. What about the front office? Can you explain in a PE house what is the difference? So what are the typical tasks?
So front office is quite straightforward. I think as George or Jens said earlier, the front office is really where you have the exposure to the external of the front. So here we're talking about the deal team. For us, we are also considering the investor relations, because you are the face of the fund. So basically, also what I want to clarify for the audience is a fund manager or an asset management firm. We manage the capital of wealthy individuals, institutional investors, or family offices. So what does the IR team do is they do the communication going from what is the deal working on, new deals that are coming up, but also quarterly reportings, for which they're collaborating with middle and back office. So, for example, that's also what I personally do, is with the team, we provide quarterly reporting, annual reporting, and through the IR team, investor relations team, this is being communicated to the investors. Also, what we do with the IR team is they communicate to the market. As said, they're the face of the firm, face of the fund, to attract new investors. In terms of middle office and back office, it's very similar to the service providers. We have a legal team, we have a risk team, compliance team, very important in Luxembourg, and then we have the finance team, where we go from valuations to accounting to reports and financial analysis.
In that case, what would be
Through the network, through a good headhunter, you get into a GP position. So yeah. Then you have.
so if you enter immediately the top, you don't do the ladder?
The steps, of course. The junior position is quite rare to have in a GP because you're mostly transferring into a GP position from a manager position in a service provider. And then for the more junior tasks, we collaborate with service providers. But here I'm solely speaking for a firm of my size. Clearly, when you have another bigger size like Carlisle, KKR, they might hire straight more junior profiles.
Maybe Yancy, if you can describe.
And yeah, when you go to a PE house directly as a junior, you still have a long way in front of you, right, to climb up the ladder. So what I have seen in my career is that it might be easier if you do something else before. So you work in the service industry for one of the big four or for a service provider. You already gain certain knowledge and experience. And then after some years, if you think, no, now I should have some experience and knowledge, you take a position at a PE house, your entry level is totally different, right? You come in at a manager level, or maybe even a little bit higher.
And can you explain a little bit the difference of what is a compensation package in a private equity compared with the service provider and this famous carried interest?
Yeah. Talking about the private equity house and the service provider who provide services to the asset manager, you might easily understand that the PE house is on the very top of the food chain. In previous times, one said working for an investment firm might be the most interesting job you can have. Nowadays, it's more private equity. So private equity in general pays higher salaries than anybody else. There are a lot of other benefits that a private equity house can offer. One of the most interesting ones is certainly that they allow their employees to invest in their funds. So what does it mean? Private equity funds or alternative funds in general are the best investment opportunity that exists at all. Yeah? We're talking in general about round about 2 times the money that investors can make there. However, as an investor in these private equity funds, you of course have to pay fees to the manager, right? But the PE house allows their employees to invest in their funds without any fees. Yeah? And even in some cases, they provide loans, interest-free loans to their employees so that they can invest and pay back with the interest. That's what we call the leverage effect, what's even more of interest. So, in fact, when working for a PE house, you can invest there and double your money you have invested.
So double the money in how much time?
In 7-8 years.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah. And where else can you do that? Nowhere. Yeah.
I know some tricks.
Yeah. So, and we talk
You
about.
should talk.
Yeah. we talk.
Without considering the risks, it's,
We talk about an average. Yeah. When I look back, I have worked for two private equity houses. My result at the moment, the last fund is not liquidated yet, is at 2.4 times. Another aspect that this industry offers, but this is only to the very, very high management, is a kind of participation in the success of their funds. We haven't seen this 5 years ago here in Luxembourg, but nowadays there are a few big firms who pay this called carried interest to their top management here in Luxembourg, to the managing directors, even sometimes to director level. This is then a compensation in the higher 6-digit sphere, at least. But again, this is a long way to go, yeah, and you have to be at the very senior level here in Luxembourg at least medium size or bigger companies. But these are the options that exist. In my view, investing into the funds of my employer is maybe the most interesting one.
And just the nuance here I want to make for the very flowery explanation, yes, it's not necessarily very common, especially at entry levels, at starting levels, in order to, as Jan said, to already speak about carrying into the MD or at director level. But also the co-invest opportunities are not necessarily that something freely available. However, what is interesting from a PE side is the overall package. We have the base salary, we have the bonus, we have the equity participation, the co-invest. It all depends on how you also personally negotiate your salary deal. You can go for a lower base salary and a higher bonus focus, for example. It all depends how you negotiate, and don't necessarily compare yourself how other people, because we hear a lot of messages, oh, there's a 6-digit salary for this position, but is it really a 6-digit salary? So really don't get too easily impressed by those salary announcements. I just want to make this side note. So yeah, and I think as well George has the salary packages for service provider. That's also interesting to.
Yeah, on the service provider side, it's more standardized, I would say. So we have the base salary, and there is a discretionary bonus. It's kind of increasing as you move higher in the ladder. And then you can also have some equity elements into that can pay off dividends. As you move up to director, managing director, or partner level, then you get different classes of shares that can provide with a significant amount when there is a liquidity event. So when the service provider is sold, you can walk away with a significant compensation. But again, it means that you need to be quite early in the game. So I think there are some opportunities out there, especially with smaller service providers, where you can go quite early in the journey of the service provider, and you can ride the wave of growth. But again, as Christine said, it's a matter of negotiation and how early you are.
The message here is really, that sometimes requires some more time, sometimes is a little bit of luck, and of course being early in the game with these liquidity events, but also the bonus, also the equity part. So it's very good to look at the overall package. This is the very, very important. So before I go for the next major actor, which is the limited partners, does anybody has questions about private equity? And don't hesitate if the name private equity, if you don't understand the concept, please, any question, is a good question. So we have, yes?
So first of all, thank you very much. I really appreciate, because I have been very much intrigued from this world of managing funds, but I didn't know how to approach it. And so this is a great opportunity to have you. So I do understand that should be a range of capabilities are required here, and in some specific roles, kind of in services, for example, you might need purely an accountant or a lawyer. But as I understand, if you go in the investment world, you might want a more complex combination of skills. How one person having a unique, let's say, combination of experiences or knowledge can figure out where belong or how can find himself within this world.
I think there is no main way, no main road to pursue exactly this career, be it more in the service sector or be it even in the deal sector. I have been working in the deal team mainly with people who studied economics. I studied law, so I was the exemption. The others were the rule. But we also had one who studied medicine. Yeah. But I think that was it. Yeah, so, but you see, these exemptions do exist. Yeah. But the team when I started was 11 people. Yeah. So it was even not so big. I think you have to have some kind of solid educational background. Yeah. Working in finance means you have to do or have to show some experience in finance, even as a lawyer or as someone who studied medicine. But I was able to do it because I did some internships already and did a little focus on my law studies. I don't remember exactly what my colleague did who studied medicine, but this is just as a basis, yeah. And then it is about performing. Working around about 80 hours per week, yeah. And there is no 5 days per week, yeah. When there is a deal in front of us, then it is 7 days per week. So, again, the same counts for the service sector. There are people with totally different educational backgrounds. It is a lot of training on the job, because when you study at university, maybe only economics can provide a bigger basis. And there's no economic studies, I know, for example, in Germany, that mentions private equity nowadays. This is not part of the studies. When you study economics in the US, of course, some business schools do it. And that's why we, for example, have started with Sacred Heart years ago to provide this private equity course here in Luxembourg, to provide some basic information, some bit more advanced information to people who are interested. And then you can build on that. Yeah? But again, it's still a lot of training on the job.
You can start from this specialist angle, as we described, if you, as a molecular biologist going in, specialist, getting then a financial background and doing investments on that side. You can come, or other specialist firms, combined with a financial background and to do investments. You can come also from the generalist side as a business person or as an economic person. What you see actually often is also the consultant word in the general, business consultant, because you're supposed as a business consultant to work with all kinds of industries, get quickly to grasp on this one, understand it, how the dynamics are, and then hopefully provide good advice to them. In private equity, it can be similar. You have a potential field of buyout firms, and one is a cement firm, the other one is a car company, and the third one is a sausage producer. You need to go quickly to understand how they work and make an assessment out of this. So this broad, generalist can help you, but you need to be curious to get into this and have some financial understanding and to make this assessment.
When I said it's intriguing, it's just because I see opportunity for you to enrich yourself. So you got some expertise and your previous experience, but this is training is an opportunity to expand further.
One point I want to add as well is find your own uniqueness. For example, something that helped me throughout my career was I speak 4 languages, which at the beginning I was like, it's nothing special, but when you're working with different deals, when you're working with different clients at the time at Deloitte, you're able to join different groups. And so your opportunities of exposure are much bigger. So that's also find your uniqueness and find your voice. And network, keep studying, etc.
So there is another question?
So I'm looking at all the different pieces and I can't fit them into the puzzle.
It's still missing this one, just to make it more confusing.
So, if I'll use myself as an example. I'm probably one of the oldest people in this room, but I have a background, I have a degree in economics and corporate finance, I speak 5 languages. But how do I get out there and do it? Because you mentioned you use recruitment agencies, you don't recruit directly. You mentioned you can come from other fields into these positions, but my issue, current people excluded, recruitment agencies in Luxembourg are incredibly lazy. So how do you get your CV when it doesn't mention, for example, this lady said, and we mentioned, well, it could come from medicine. Well, if your CV says you have a degree in medicine, and particularly if it's sorted by a computer, it's not going to be looking at private equity jobs that are out there on the market at the moment. So how do you get in there? Because
if we make it a bit more concrete, we can listen here, you there, we here, we met together here. How we can establish a line of dialogue and communication for us that have the willingness. You said there are, I don't know, 1,000 people, 1,200 people required, and here are showing up people that are really intrigued and willing to be in this world.
Yeah.
I applied already, and I was said you're not accountant.
Yeah.
So we don't take
It's extremely difficult. I fully agree with you.
going to change it?
That is, my answer would be network. For example, through the MBA, I met an amazing lady working in the hotel business, and we were working on a hotel deal.
Some
So you
of us
put
are
two
quite
and two
worried
together.
though that we don't have the time left to be doing MBAs. With a back plus 4.
And a network
If
doesn't
you
need to
have
be an
your,
MBA.
yeah, if you have your studies in economics and you have your experience in corporate finance, I think the MBA is not what you should seek for. I agree with Christine, network is very important, especially in small Luxembourg. But I'm also surprised when you say recruitment agencies are lazy here. I personally only see open positions, let's see, on the upper level. And when there is such a position, it is mainly urgent to fill it. And when we are then talking with the agencies, it seems to me that they are very much on speed, and we get the candidates relatively quickly. maybe we have a chat later about the agencies you have dealt with so far.
Or maybe you'd like to suggest some
recommend some others, yeah. Because in fact, what I see as well is in most of the cases, I only see 3 agencies.
Quick one. You mentioned now, for instance, you have a medical degree. Then, for instance, you should target, obviously, your application. It doesn't make sense if you apply to an infrastructure fund with a molecular biology, there's no fit. But there are venture capital investors in Luxembourg, Mangrove also, that are also active. Others potentially, our colleague who's also working with this teaching. Expon, for instance, that are investing in life sciences and will potentially have a need for somebody with a medical degree.
The recruitment agency know that.
The recruitment, they have a profile of
we
needs.
now know it, but does the billing know it?
For sure. The recruitment agency will get a profile, and we would like to have somebody with a financial background, most likely, and with a life sciences, medical, or biology, or chemistry. So that would fit, and then, that should be a targeted element. But the other element as well, from what you described, more senior position or experience you have, there are independent directors positions in a number of funds as well that are looking for experience on a general level, on the financial, potentially experience of having run accounting parts or corporate organization elements. So that could be also an element. Again, this is a specific angle depending on what your profile is there. Maybe not then a deal maker in a team, but more on providing your expertise and what you've over your career have seen.
And I think this point of the urgencies is very important, because sometimes people do have a deep problem and they need a role immediately. And so if you are doing this networking, you are on the spot on the opportunities and you can play with the urgency. But you need to talk within this ecosystem to know really what are the different companies, who you can talk. So there is some like sales, some building relationships aspect. You wanted to raise a question?
I have a specific question. What does it take for an accountant to become a fund accountant?
The what? A fund accountant, yes.
Be a fund accountant.
So I started my career as an accountant, and I became kind of a fund accountant in Luxembourg. And the first time I opened the trial balance of the fund, I thought that something was missing there. Because there were only 20-25 lines. So if you know accounting, and you have experience in accounting, I don't know, in an operational company or in a big multinational setting, I think making the shift to fund accounting, it's easy. Because basically you will have 20-25 lines in the trial balance and 3-4 material numbers, right? In my view, it's not rocket science, right? It's debits and credits. What you are adding up is different than what you used to add.
And there's a few aspects that are very specific to the fund industry, but I think you can learn them on the job. I also worked in Belgium first as an accountant through my studies, and then when I came to Luxembourg, when I got the exposure of what is a fund trial balance, it's like George said, it's not rocket science, but there are some specificities, and you can easily learn them on the job, and also with continuous education.
Sorry, Sarah had a question.
Yeah, well, it's a general question in that sense that you're talking about 1,200 approximately open positions. Do you have any idea how that sits over the different sectors and or different positions, let's say much more front, much more middle, much more back? Do you have everything, or is there a specific angle that is really lacking the talent?
Again, when you have the PE house, the asset manager as top of the food chain, you can assume that they have less problems to find people, because where do they look? At the service provider. Yeah. So most of these positions is back office and middle office, But again, this is a very good point to start with.
To enter the industry.
Yeah, to enter the industry and to gain some experience. From time to time, I do some coaching for friends or children of friends, and last time it was the same. I recommended first go to a service provider. He went to 2 service providers, and I said, no, not yet to a big asset manager, a very small one, right? You still have to learn. 2 more years at a very small, now he is at a big one. It's a long path, but he entered that at manager level.
And as well, I believe with the figures of 2023, I think in Luxembourg the service provider industry is covered by 60%, while the pure asset manager is 40%. So the majority in the market is service provider, and I believe the growth trends for the next years is 20%.
There is an exponential growth.
So
also.
basically the 1,200 is going to grow.
Is going to
Yes.
grow. So this is a big industry, it's finance in Luxembourg. Okay, yeah, the last and then we go for the...
There was also a question we will
okay, no, we can go ahead.
How do you see so little founders, entrepreneurs in the business itself? Besides the fact that they see it as moving to the dark side, a lot of them.
What's the dark side?
But but I know there's quite a bit who want to make a move and who find it very difficult, and they are networked, they have the networks because they've been interacting with all the VC and PE firms, mostly VC firms. But still it's very difficult, and I think it's interesting for VC and PE firms to have those entrepreneurs as well, because they understand the underlying businesses where you invest in. And the step is still very hard to make, I think.
In this case, I think mainly the VC or the growth industry is of interest, right? And you have to see what asset manager is operating in this industry. There are big ones who are not at all, other big ones who are. Then you have middle market firms. I think one would need to do some research. What names could be of interest for a future career and what not. And also, when you know the names and you say, maybe I don't go directly to the asset manager, maybe I go first to the service provider. It's again easy. You have found out who the names are. Go to the RCS, Google the names, look at the street, and then you will find who's the service provider. That's how we do it. Find out where.
But are you looking at getting founders and entrepreneurs into the business?
I think there could be a huge value add. When you work at the service provider level, be it at a big four or be it at an administrator, yes. If they service this sector, yes.
And it's happening as well. What I've seen in fund managers is that entrepreneurs who have built their own firms come as advisor on board, as industry advisor, to work with the investment team to then coach these investments. So it is happening. There's a value added clearly. Now to your question, why is it maybe a little bit easier, not so easy and can be challenging? Because there can be also different mindsets, right? You are an entrepreneur, you're running your own thing. You might want to have your independence and your freedom. In such an investment firm, it's more institutionalized. You have a hierarchy, right? And that might be one of the reasons why also it doesn't work out all the time, and you should think carefully when you want to do that. But it is happening, and as you say, there's a value added, and there's certain arrangements like these advisor functions, or if they're happy with these structures, then to directly join the teams as well.
Maxime, the last question then.
Yeah, well, just more a small remark, but I think we have a very nice picture of private equity firms, and I think probably tomorrow most of them will get at least 35 CVs on there. So, I mean, from experience, one small advice I would probably give to people who are trying to find a job in this sector as well, is that you also have to be careful about what these private equity companies active in Luxembourg, the image they have of the Luxembourg office. If you look back, let's say 15 years, most of the private equity Luxembourg desks were basically back office. They were doing not nothing but very basic things, and you didn't get the opportunity to grow the ladder. It has changed, but still you have some of these private equities that will not offer you the same growing opportunities than others. So this is really something to look at when you consider finding a job in this sector. I think probably what I used to do is a good indicator is just go on their website, look at the list of countries, and the first thing, will you see Luxembourg on the list of countries? For some of them, not most of them, but quite a lot of them, you will see that Luxembourg is not even mentioned. So that's sometimes a good indicator. And this brings back to the carry interest and the co-investment possibilities. Most of the time, there's definitely the seniority of the person to access these possibilities, but there's also sometimes some blocking elements based on where you are based.
So it means they consider more the deal part of the front office in other countries, and Luxembourg more has the outsourcer in-house of the back deal.
Exactly.
It's slowly changing on the market, but it's definitely still very active.
Maybe the budget release in the UK has helped today. No, it's not a joke. I know it from the big names here in Luxembourg. There are for sure no senior deal guys yet, but they go in London to their associates and maybe senior associates and say, you want to make a career, maybe a bit quicker, so what about considering going to Luxembourg for 2 or 3 years? Because a trend in the industry we see is that while in the past the portfolio management was outsourced to the headquarters, be it in London or Stockholm or wherever, the big PE houses now like to evidence that they do both in Luxembourg, risk management and portfolio management. And they can only do that appropriately when they have at least 1 or 2 dealers here. So we are still much behind London, for sure, and it will take maybe 10 or 15 years, but it has started at least. The hit with the website is a very good one. I wouldn't rely on it nowadays so much because a lot of people like me recommended to their clients to put Luxembourg on the website irrespective how big the operations in Luxembourg are. Just because when you have a fund here in Luxembourg, then you have to have Luxembourg on the website.
Obviously needed, because otherwise you don't have the resources to, the fund doesn't have the money to run. So either you're a high net worth, ultra high net worth individual and you have the resources on your own, and you have a long investment horizon and an ability to assess your investment, and I think most of us don't have that. So then also either similar to actually on the private equity side, either with a specialist, so EIB for instance is recruiting life science specialists for its fund-of-fund operations to invest in European venture capital funds. So there is this profile as well, but the majority is more the generalist economic background, business background, education that is specializing and executing these investments. The work is a work of similar to on the front of the side of a private equity house of screening opportunities. So you're getting 200 opportunities, infrastructure funds, opportunities, climate funds that we're getting annually for outside of Europe investments. You need to filter this down to 5 to 10 that you're going to conclude. So it's an appraisal work in terms of assessing these investment opportunities, risk, return, risk and all that stuff, dimensions from reputational risk to physical risk to financial dimensions of it, and the return you're going to get for this. So you would need some financial assessment, that either as your primary education or something that you added on later to it, that you're able to make this assessment, and then with a longer investment horizon you're able to invest into that. My own profile is such that I I did studies in economics and business. Was doing some research, a PhD on valuation of companies, and then was working with a consultancy firm in the corporate finance practice, so this broad element looking into different sectors, different fields, and was then joining the EIB group, the EIF in this case, the European Investment Fund, because I was driven also by this impact element, the European element of doing something good at the European level on different dimensions, be it climate, be it cohesion, be it job creation in Europe. And then was joining initially the European venture capital team, doing fund-of-fund assessments for German-speaking, in my case, fund managers to select them out, and then later on was changing internally to do the same operations outside of Europe, climate funds in Africa, Asia, Latin America, to do these assessments based on then on the job I was learning the necessary elements for renewable energy funds, for adaptation funds in Africa or in Asia or in Latin America. So that was on the job then, based on a hopefully solid education on the financial side to make these assessments. So that's and in most of the cases for be it a pension fund, be it an insurance company, be it a public development bank, this is a similar profile that you can apply there and make a career then on the LP side, limited partner side, to be investor in these.
If you compare with the asset management, what would be, especially when people can invest on their own, can you define a little bit?
So, I mean, it is asset management. You're investing in the asset class of private equity as a...
So it's similar?
It's a similar...
What distinguishes then this sector then?
So it is more an element, classical asset management in terms of investing in stocks and bonds. It is more a people business in our case, because you're investing in a GP team of, typically EIB does invest in first-time teams. It's a big part of our operations, so newly formed teams that we want to support. So you're making an assessment about the team, about the cohesion of this team, the chemistry of the team, so that they can work together over at least 10 years of the lifetime of the fund. So this is an element of making an assessment, not only financially, what are the returns of the investment and the strategy they're making, but also, do they fit? Is there something, are there red flags where you see this might not work out? So that's a specific angle where you go a little bit away from the pure financial ratio analysis that you're doing on investments. But apart from that, it is an appraisal element where you look at the opportunities on the return side and the risks on the other side, and make an assessment and then make a recommendation out of this.
And what about the investments, as we have discussed, this part of co-investing, how does it work here? Yeah.
That's an element also, because again, one of the red threads through the talk is as well, this is a universe with these different actors around it, but you can switch in between. You have the path that's described from service providers into front office, GP, AFM investment. There's another path is via, you're working for an asset manager and you're investing into these funds, to go into a front office position on a GP. Background is that more and more LPs, limited partners, are doing co-investments alongside the funds they invested into individual projects. So we make a commitment to a venture capital fund covering the Nordics in Europe, and we sign a ticket of 50 million to this fund. They get off the ground, but then we also say, if you have specific deals in, I don't know, for instance, in diabetes, research and companies in this field, we would be interested to invest directly into them. So there's an element of getting out of the fund-of-fund type of investment, where you assess a team and investment, making direct investments as well. So there's expertise you can build, which then builds your own profile, which might become attractive then again to become part of a front office GP team to do investments as well. And some of my colleagues later on either raise their own fund of funds or raise their own funds as well, based on an expertise to set up their own team and pursue a certain strategy. So this is one of the themes that, in this universe, it's not very segregated. There is flexibility to move around depending on where you want to go.
James, do you want to give an example from this co-investment?
There daily examples I have, it's mainly two things. First of all, the angle Gunther explained, to keep an investor with me in this particular investment, which makes the investor or even the pool of investors very happy, because in most of the cases they don't pay fees for it. Yeah. So they still trust this PE house because they have already given a big ticket to, and now they do it in a specific deal. And the outcome, the result, the return will be much, much nicer. Me as a PE house, I have this significant advantage. I could do bigger deals. I could play in a different class now from time to time. Originally, I might only have tickets for investments between 50 to 100 million, but with Gunther's help and the EIB, I suddenly have 150 or even 200. Yeah? So this is then a different game. I have to be prepared for that. I have to have a little bit of experience, because sometimes it is a difference when you do big deals or small deals. But this enables me to grow as well. So this is a give and take. Yeah.
Okay, so we would just, I suggest we will do a final question from the panelists, and then we can raise questions to finalize. So we discussed a little bit about the compensation and across the different actors. Thanks to your question that perhaps it's very highly paid and perhaps it will be increased in the future. And what I would like to ask now is what career advice to all of you, so maybe Christine you can start, you would like to give to your younger self, or to people that are starting the career, or to people that are looking for a job and have maybe specific or general skills and wish to enter this industry?
When I finished university, I thought, woohoo, it's finished. Forget about it. I am still studying. I am continuing with qualifications into different industries that are necessary or supporting my role today. That can go from a small qualification of several months to a qualification that takes multiple years to achieve. So be open to continue studying. It's definitely one that I was not expecting when I left university. The second one is have patience, because this industry, especially on my side, is extremely slow-paced. It really depends on how you position yourself, how hungry you are, what you want to achieve, the network you have. But when you're too eager, it's not playing in your benefit neither. So I would say keep studying, keep relevant to the market, and be patient. George?
You will do it.
So I'll keep it short. So I would say know your values in life and build your career around those values. I think if you know what you value in life, it would be easier to know where you are going in terms of career. And the worst thing that can happen is that you end up after 15 or 20 years in a field, and you realize that what you are doing is sometimes against your core values.
This way to be at the right time, at the right place, and then you grab this opportunity.
And finally, Jens?
Yeah, it was partially covered already. So be hungry and stay hungry. And if you then work hard, I think almost everybody can make a career in private equity. Because we can just have a certain basis, maybe through a study. The rest is on ourselves. And even if we study economics, we don't know much about private equity. So there's a lot of things you can learn by yourself when you just Google a bit. Yeah? I always have a pile on my desk. Surprisingly, it never becomes smaller, irrespective of how much I read. Yeah. So be hungry, stay hungry, and work hard.
I think one thing based also in my experience and the changes we had, and I had the same situation because I was working for Gartner as my colleague, and then I went for a startup in AI. It didn't work so well, and I had to come back to the job market. And I think the most important message I had for myself was sometimes we want to be a GP, or I want to work for PwC, or I want to work for that. So we limited ourselves because we are so obsessed to be something or to have something that we don't see all the possibilities. And I think the message here is that they are showing so many possibilities, so many ways of getting to LP, to GP, to service providers, that we should never limit ourselves and let life just surprise us. But you need to go out there, you need to get the education. If you're not from finance, you need to study and do a course of then private equity or an MBA or wherever it requires you to get some qualification to be able to be credible and protect your reputation. And if you stay home, you don't network. But if you come to this type of events, if you have communities, I arranged my job after lunch. They wanted to hire me for something, and then I finished in another role. So it was not the one I applied. So it's like this, life is like this. And I think they are the proof of that. They worked for many things. So I wanted to ask you the final questions, and then we go forward. Please, you have this wonderful... Yes.
Günther mentioned adding some financial elements to your CV. So can you name some certifications or trainings which can be valuable for us?
So again, this is it's an inherently financial industry, so you need some credentials around that. Different things. There's the CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst. There is the Chartered Accountancy, was it CPA,
Chartered Alternative Accountants, CFA,
CAIA. Then there are even an MBA course gives you the broad element around including financial elements. We are offering at HEC this overview course for private equity, which is not a financial assessment course, but gives at least the overview around it. Yeah, these are some. There are at the University of Luxembourg. You can get an MSc, a Master in Science on specific financial fields. There are a number of them. But,
of course, if you want to enter this industry, you don't need an MBA at start. But my experience has shown, if you want to become a senior or reach a senior level, I think 90% have an MBA. So you won't get there without. Almost not.
Is there high attrition?
Sorry?
Is there high attrition? Did this opening up new opportunities?
Working for a PE manager is also a very hard job. Yeah? And when I left the last PE house to set up my own company, I was one of the seniors here in Luxembourg, and I brought in a guy from PwC to replace me, to become the new managing director. And just 2 weeks ago, he told me that he's leaving because it is a lot of pressure. You have to perform. Yeah? But this industry is not a one-way route. So I know some examples where people were working then a few years for a PE house, even at director level, yeah, and they said, no, that's enough. I go back to PwC and become a partner there, yeah, or become a managing director at a service provider. Yeah? This is not a step back, yeah, because the job can be very different, yeah. And especially when I remember I was working for an American PE house, this is again very different. Yeah? What you read in sometimes negative things, it's all true. Yeah? It's hire and fire. If you don't perform, you're out.
I think this comes a bit together with what George said about your values. And I definitely, I'm only made the step towards an asset management position, but going back is not the correct word, but going to a service provider in the industry is quite common, and it's definitely not a negative view to the person.
And to be honest, if you have worked for big PDRs for some years, Big Four and other service providers are very delighted to work with your experience and knowledge and your connections.
And I remember when I joined London, my team had 50% turnover rate. I was losing half of my people every year.
50%?
50%. So how you can grow a business if you are losing half of your staff? So the first thing you need to do is to stabilize that, right? And I know there are providers out there that are losing 30 to 40% of the people.
So that to be to a competitor or to people?
Competition or in-house positions. It is the nature of the business, right? I mean, not 50%, not 40%. I don't think that this is healthy. But I mean, now the team staff attrition rate is below 10%, which is one of the lowest in the market, and I think it's healthy. And I think this is why we are winning the business, because this is something key for the fund manager, right? Imagine if you are a fund manager and you have to speak to new people every 3 months. And this is not sustainable.
Any other questions?
We are still there. We can have a private chat later on.
Okay, so let's do a closing, Safio.
I know that we have to move to the most interesting part of the evening, the second most interesting part of the evening. But before going there, I would like to say a big thanks to the panel, Gunther, Christine, Jans, and George. And this event was actually not even possible without Christine.
Thank you.
And also in the team of Sacred University Alumni Association, there is Mustafa. He's doing the photography. Mark has recently joined us. He's quite motivated. Paul could not make it to the evening because of his personal reasons, but he arranged all the snacks today. So thanks to him. Before I have a few more announcements to make. Most interesting part: if anybody is looking for finance and operations manager position, so you can get in touch with myself or Mustafa. We have a lead from one of the alumni who has shared with us, and it's an electronic money institute based in Luxembourg, So it requires only 5 years of experience in finance and operation management. So we are happy to refer you through the alumni. She could not be present here. She has her holiday. What else? Yeah, photo. Yeah, we have to take a group photo with everyone here, and also a group photo with.
A big applause to the panelists.
And we also have Esther present here. She is the advisor of the Alumni Association. So and she gave us very important advice for this event as well, which actually worked out pretty well. Thank you.